Okay, so today I want to go over, discuss a little bit on what we do with the kettlebell stuff. And I'll say forthright that I'm not an RKC, I'm not an HKC. A lot of what I've learned about kettlebells has been through guys like Pavel, Dan John, Gray Cook, Nigar Fanuni, which I'm sure you guys are all familiar with most of those names. I do plan on possibly going to go get my HKC. I think Greg, are you an RKC or HKC? Yeah, so Greg's an RKC. And I believe the differentiation between the two is HKC deals mainly with just the get up, just the swing, and just the goblet squat. And then the RKC takes it to the next level. What they do, what snatches and cleans and snatches. Yeah, so they'll add a little bit more of the Olympic variety in there too. What I think is great about it is that it's not just about kettlebells either. Like you go to one of those workshops, from what I've heard, it's all about, they talk about corrective exercise, they talk about proper progressions, they talk about movement. So I mean, I've been invited to a couple that I just haven't been able to go out to. There was one in Chicago that I wanted to go to. But a lot of what I've learned about kettlebells is through experimentation and actually coaching them. But Dan John's a big influence. Like I think we still have the DVDs in the back room, but I would highly encourage all of you to watch Dan John's tutorial on the kettlebell stuff. Because a lot of the cues I'm going to use are ones that I stole from him. They're not any that I made up, or there's really nothing that I can say that is unique to, well, I made this up. And, so a lot of what we're going to discuss today is through him and Mike Robertson. But you guys notice, like, we don't go out of our way to include kettlebells too much. It's not like we're just kettlebell people. And I don't think any of you are just kettlebell people. Like, we view it as a tool. There is a lot of validity to it, and it's been around forever. I just like how a lot of people are like, oh, kettlebells are new, and they're a cannonball with a handle, and let's swing them and do all sorts of things. And it's like, no, they've actually been around for a while. It's only been within the past maybe, I don't know, 5 to 10 years that they've kind of grown in popularity here. But you guys have been here long enough where you've seen our programming and what we do with them. So we do a lot of goblet squats with them. You'll see, like, I think within the past year we're starting to do more of the Turkish get up. One of the biggest things we added to the off-season programming with our pro guys is more get up variations. And then of course everyone hates get ups. I hate them. They're a pain. They suck. But what's great about them is they really show where your weaknesses are and what you need to work on. And everyone that doesn't is going to complain about them, especially the pro guys. So I'll go over them a little bit today, like how we coach someone through the get up, because there's even progression through the get up. Because you might see in our program we have a naked get up. Does anyone know what the naked get up is? Yes. So it's without weight, but it's only really half the movement. So we're not going up to the point where we're standing. We're just doing and I'm going to break that down. And then we have the regular Turkish get up, which is all the way up, all the way down. And then there's distinct coaching cues that we want to use with each. And then time permitting, we'll just go over the swing too. Is there one that you prefer? I'm not going to go over goblet squat because I think goblet squat is pretty idiot-proof. Like, we don't need to go over goblet squat. Plus, we go over squats anyways. So out of the two, is there one you want me to do first between get up and the swing?
Get up.
You want to do the get up first? All right. So who here has actually been with one of our kids and had to teach them to go through the Turkish get up? Has anyone done it yet? Chris and Craig? Yes. All right. So, first of all, a lot of times, like, what I'll do with all of our, especially with our younger kids, is there's a good coaching. It's like, do this, not this, this. So a lot of times, what I mean by that is you're going to demonstrate it. This could be anything from a deadlift to a swing to whatever. You're going to demonstrate it and say, I want you, like with a swing, I want you to do this, not this, this. And that second this part is the most important one, because then it re-ingrains what you want them to do. Does that make sense? So a lot of times with the Turkish get up, I'm going to demonstrate it, and I'll fly through it, and they'll be there with like deer in headlights. What the hell was that? Like, you expect me to do? Because they'll see like 20 different things going. They're like, okay. And then you'll see, I'm going to break it down. I'm going to do it with you. Do this, not this, this. Okay. So a lot of times, I'll just go through it, and it's really important with the get up. It's distinct. Like, every movement is its own distinct movement. So it's not like a seamless. I mean, you see a lot of people like they get set up and they're like, they're trying to race through it, and it's like, no, that's not how we're doing it. Like every movement is its own distinct. And I'm sure I'm going to count it down, but I don't even know. There's like 10 or 12 distinct parts, right? So we're going to start on their back. This arm always stays vertical. You want to tell them to lock it in. So a lot of times it might be poking up, and they'll be all over the place. The important part to remember is that arm stays vertical. Whether you want to tell them they're punching the ceiling, I don't care. But that arm's staying vertical the whole time. In all honesty, this first movement is the hardest one for them to get, because what are most people going to do when you tell them to get up? They're gonna do that, right? They're gonna do a sit-up, which is what we don't want to do, because again, we want to keep proper spinal position too. What I like to tell them to do is they're gonna use that elbow as their fulcrum, and they're gonna glide it over the body and use that to push themselves up. So whether you want to say, punch and crunch, I like to just say roll to your side and punch the ceiling. So they're to their side and they're punching that ceiling. So you see the difference between the two. So they're not sitting up, which a lot of them are going to do. They're literally just going to use that elbow and punch their ceiling. And then from there, it's a T position. So right there. So if you're standing behind them, like their upper body looks like the T position, then I go hips high, hips high. And a lot of times too, you got to watch that foot, because their heel might come up. They won't get full extension, hip extension, so they'll be here. I want them here. They're firing that glute as hard as they can. And that's hips high. And then what are we going to do from there? Right, we're going to kick under. I say sweep the leg, right, like a Karate Kid reference. So they're going to sweep the leg here. So that's going to be a tough one too, depending on hip mobility. And if we were going to break it down, that's the get up. A lot of times I'm just going to start people with just that portion. So instead of working our way up, we're going to go 1, T position, hips high, right, and then we're going to work our way back down, right? 1, down to the elbow, glide themselves down. So when you see in our programming, naked get up, that's a naked get up. There's no way we're focusing on keeping a vertical arm, keeping good spinal position, and breaking down that movement in each distinct part. Then from there, you might have seen Chris and I do this too. We can kick it up a notch. Certainly we can add a kettlebell, we can add a dumbbell. Sometimes I go palms up and we being fists, and I'll put their shoe right up on top. It has to stay there. That's going to teach them to keep that vertical arm, right? So it's not going to be moving all over the place. It's like a sensei moment, right? It's like, oh, take your shoes off. Oh, okay. They think you're just going to be like, oh, I just want them to do the shoes off. Then you put the shoe on their fist or on their palm, and you're like, that does not fall off. You can't grab it. I like to go fist, just because then they can't grab it. You literally put the shoe right on top of their fist. Now it's a whole different ballgame, right? So now they're like, oh boy, now I really have to. Then if anything, it slows them down, right? Because we want to get to those distinct parts. One thing we want to be cognizant of too is when we get up to that hips high position, they come down. What are a lot of people going to do? They're just going to dive bomb back down to the floor, right? So a lot of them are just going to go like that, right? No, I want them to be hips high, down, and then if we're unloaded, if we have a 40-pound kettlebell is one thing, but if we're no weight, I don't mind if they just glide themselves down like that. There's some guys, I've seen some videos where they cue it down to the elbow, and then they come down, but I think it's just personal preference. But either way, they're controlling it down. They're not just plopping down to the floor, right? Does that make sense? So a lot of times, that's the starting point for me for teaching the Turkish get-up. Because that's a little less daunting than going over here, then sweeping the leg, come up and bam, and they're going to look at you like, what the hell? I'm not going to be able to do that. So the naked get-up is usually the starting point that we use. And of course, you have to use a little discretion. If you're working with 15, 14-year-old female, you're probably not going to program naked get-ups. I might just say empty get-up. So you might just be cognizant of that point. If you're working with one of the baseball guys or a naked get-up, whatever. Naked. Like, you want me to take my clothes off? Like, no, it's not. That's not what we mean by naked get-up. But with a younger female client, even maybe sometimes with an older female client, you just got to use discretion. Particularly with the younger ones, I'll just say empty get-up, and that's just empty, no weight, simple, self-explanatory. Okay. So going back to the get-up, if we're here in that position, we're going to sweep the leg. So we're going to get the knee in line with that heel. And this is going to be problematic for some people. If they can't, someone won't get that hip through slab, it's just going to be where they're going to hit. A lot of people are going to be here. We don't want them to do that. But they're in that high position. They're going to sweep that leg, and they're just going to come right up. Okay. One thing you got to be aware of is that you don't want that butt to stick out too much. So if they come to here, when they get up, they're going to be like, they're going to kind of jet that butt up a little bit. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, as far as that transition from sweeping the leg to here, I find, you see where some people just go too far, and they come way out here, and then that just becomes problematic. So it's all about where they place that knee here. And now all I have to do is literally come up here, and I kind of scissor that leg back. So from there, they're always going to be looking at that kettlebell till this point, and then they're going to be facing straight ahead. And then from there, it's just a simple stand up, right? But at the same time, you want to be cognizant of that pelvic positioning. You don't want them to be like here. Brace their torso, squeeze that glute, and they're going to use that heel to pull themselves up into that position and finish with their glute, right? So if you have to tap it, it's fine. They have to finish with that glute, and they're looking straight ahead. Again, vertical arm. Was I out of the picture?
No, you're good.
Vertical arm, right? They're here. And again, we're just going to reverse the action, right? Reverse one's back. Bam. And then from here, what I like is scissoring that foot back in. Because from there, it's just hard to get to reach down to the floor without scissoring that leg out of the way, and then they can go down to the floor. Again, keeping that good spinal position. And then from there, they got to get that leg back through, work their way down to the elbow. And that's the get up. Now, do you have any other coaching cues, because you've been actually through it, that we could toss in there?
No, I think just like you said, that just when you
Greg, you want to
slide the arm down,
Yep.
is if it was unweighted,
Yeah.
and if like even the whole hinging the hip, like not sticking the butt out, I think it's really heavy. You would hinge the hip.
So with a heavier load, they're gonna
Like if you're
go ahead.
here and like it's really heavy, then once you come up to here, to get off of your hand,
Gotcha.
if this weighed like 60 pounds, you would push the button back just because you wouldn't be able to
That
do
makes
it.
sense.
And then to get down too, if it was really, really
So
heavy.
that one transition point isn't a huge like game breaker as far as like hinging that hip back then.
Right.
Okay.
Because if it's really heavy here,
Yeah, it's gonna
and
be
you
hard.
don't hinge, then you're gonna fall.
Okay, does that make sense then? So when it's empty, it's going to be a lot easier to do that, but when we're talking 30, 40, 50, 60 pound or kgs, then we're going to do that hip hinge back. And also, like you said, like when we're down in that position and we come down, I even think if that's loaded, would they still, I mean, I understand if it's super low, like that's a good way to dislocate the shoulder.
Yeah.
So what do? They just say that is the form. So that's what I said earlier about it being loaded or unloaded. Like if we're using empty 5-pound dumbbell, or you know, this is the 12 or 17-pound kettlebell, like that will be okay because that's not really going to put up too much strain on the shoulder. But when we're talking much heavier loads, that's a good way to kind of piss that shoulder off. We want to be aware of that. So does that make sense as far as breaking down the Turkish getup? And it's important, again, just to reiterate, you got to slow it down for them because literally they're going to get through it. I mean, I see in the corner of my eye people, I got Turkish getups. I'm going to come down here where there are no coaches, right? And I'm going to do it. I mean, this is like the secret, like Turkish getup area. Where people like come to they're all down there. They're not even going to see me. And there's what? How many of us in here? 7 of us, 8 of us. Like somebody sees it. Like they're just over here like. It's just like a dynamic, like super spastic power movement, and no, it's everything. I mean, and I remember when I was up in Toronto, I know I did a presentation with Nick Tuminello, and there were a couple of kettlebell people in the audience, and he kind of busted their chops a little bit. He's like, why is it when you have a dumbbell and you do a swing, it's a swing, or you do a kettlebell, if you get up with the dumbbell, you know, you get through it. But the second you put a kettlebell in your hand, it's you know, he just made that joke. I laughed at it. I don't know if, I mean, a lot of people laughed at it, but I don't know if he you got like darts thrown at them a little bit with their eyes, but I was like, that's a funny observation. I have no idea if that has anything to do with the technique-wise, but yeah, I don't know. But again, we want to slow people down and make sure every coaching point is its own distinct part of the movement. Does that make sense? Okay. So with the swing, do we have any questions for that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
When you're coaching it, do you like break it down step by step and do it with them, or do you like?
What I'll do is I'll demonstrate it.
Demonstrate it.
Okay, I'll and then they'll give me the deer and headlights on. And then I'll be like, okay, and I'll be like, relax. I'm going to take you through it. So I'm going to lie down next to them.
Okay.
And I'm going to be like, I'm going to give them the same cues.
Yeah.
Right. So come over. That first portion is going to be hard for a lot of people. Like in that context, like I'll demonstrate it with them, and almost invariably they're going to be here.
Right.
So then I'll get up and be like, no, you want to toss it over. You know. Well, we have to work on that for like 2 or 3 minutes, or maybe not. Some people pick it up pretty quickly.
Right.
But I'm going through with it the whole time.
Okay.
Like each just saying like, okay, now I want hips high, right? Get the hips all the way up, squeeze your glute, squeeze that left glute, you know, get that leg through, like I'm doing it with them. You know, because I just think that's the best way to do it. Because it's going to be hard to tell them to sweep. It's going to be hard to tell them to sweep the leg when you're just telling them to sweep the leg. And like, what do you mean by sweep the leg? Or with scissor, like scissor it. What do you mean? Like if you do it, then they're more prone to get. Okay. Make sense? Right? So again, that DVD series by Dan John, I forgot the actual name of it, but it's a 3-disc series, and he has a whole section on kettlebells, like teaching to get up, teaching to swing, which we're going to do right now. All right. So, what's the biggest mistake we see with swings? So there's a couple. Like if we had to make like a top 3 list of mistakes we see with a kettlebell swing, what are we gonna say? What's that?
Extension driving movement.
Yep, that'd be like I'm saying hyperextension. That'd be one. With regards to the swing itself, like how high do we typically want to go with the swing? Like are we gonna be one of these people? Because then again, that can come into the hyperextension, right? So we don't need to go way high, way up here, which is going to drive lumbar hyperextension, so we don't need to go that high. What about the swing itself? Like, what do most people do? Do they usually do like a nice hip snap? No, what do? They typically squat. Right, so you see people, I see every time I go to a commercial gym, even personal trainers teaching them people how to swing. I'm like, that's not a good swing. You know, because what are they doing? They're here, and well, it's just like this. Right? And it's like, you're just swinging around. Like, nah, not really. So there's a difference between a squat swing, which is what we don't want. Again, do this, not this, this, right? So there's a difference between a squat swing. So I'll demonstrate, here's what you're doing. You're doing the squat. Here's what I want you to do, right? We're going to do more of a hip snap. So pushing it back, getting more of that hip snap and letting the hips do the work. Of course, getting to that point is going to be the issue, right? So how are we going to get to that point? So one cue that I like to use, or one example would be the way Dan John explained it, was think of it as when you do a prone plank, what are you coaching them to do? They get in that prone plank, they're bracing, they're tight, right? Everything's nice, compact, and they're solid. So the setup point, you got two trains of thought. Like I've seen people, when they set up for the swing, they're going to be way up here. I think this is more for the advanced people who've done it, because then they can use that momentum to go. But for me, I'd rather have someone straddle the kettlebell for a beginner. And then we can just practice good deadlift technique while we're at it too, right? So they're going to straddle it, get down, pick it up, and that's going to be their starting position. And they're not just loosey-goosey, like, okay, what do? They're tight, shoulder blades, chest out, shoulder blades together. They're gripping the kettlebell tight. Like it should be like they're trying to melt that handle in their hand, okay? And then from there, it's going to be getting momentum going. But what we're focusing on is getting them to that swing pattern, but we're sitting back, getting that good hip hinge pattern. Now if I use Doug, some people aren't going to know, what do you mean by hip hinge pattern? What do you mean? I can't get it. So I'll have him stand in front of me, right? So all I want you to do hands here. I want you to be like that, right? So let me grab your hands. Don't let me pull you back. Right? Don't let me pull you back. And you feel that tension back there? Yep. That's what you want them to feel. You want them to feel that tension in their hamstrings and their glutes. So literally, you're going to grab their hands and you're going to try to push them back, and then they're going to feel, oh, that's what it means. That's where I want the tension to be. And that's going to help them. And then from there, it's about attacking the groin, attacking the zipper is what Dan John would say. So a lot of times people are going to be waiting here. And they do that swing. It's a nice long swing. And that's just a major backbreaker. Right? That's just going to put a lot of undue, like, it's literally like, they're here and they're like, I'm just like, no. So we have to keep it tight, right? So attack that zipper, attack the groin. Even with the college or pro guys, try to hit yourself in the balls. You're not going to say that with a female client, obviously, but it's a perfect cue. It's like you're pulling it down and you're trying to really get to that zipper. Right? So we're here. So instead of having this nice long kettlebell swing, which is just god awful, we're going to be here. We're pulling it down to that zipper. Okay, does that make sense? And I'm sure you've heard us use that cue quite a bit. And by the way, Flex coaching to explain. Every time I keep reminding myself, I'm trying to talk. I'm like, okay, now we're gonna do this. But does that make sense? All right. So attack the zipper. Attack your groin, whatever you want to use. It works. It has to be a nice tight arc. Yet they have to tame the arc. And what I mean, that's another cue that we need to use too. Is those people that get way up here and they're really loosey-goosey. Like I want them to use Doug here. You okay with that, kettlebell? I'm doing it, guys. Let's just get it going with the swing. So just be one of those guys that does like a big arc. Right? We don't want that. So I'll put my hand here, go tame the arc, hit me in the hand. Right? And sometimes too, I'll throw it down. So those people who have a hard time attacking their zipper, even after you say attack the zipper, they still don't get it. You literally hit that kettlebell and make them use those hips. Like that way, that's going to force it to really kind of engage everything and prevent it from having them tip over. So they'll literally be doing their swing. They'll hit me here because I want to be right about eye level. They're going to hit me here, and they'll learn to pull it down. Does that mean? So it's not just some loosey-goosey swing, but they're nice and compact and they're getting a little bit more power out of their hips. Does that make sense? Any questions with the swing?
Setup wise, how wide do you want your feet? Setup.
Yep. So with the beginner, as far as setup, like I said, with the beginners, like we could use it as an opportunity to practice, the deadlift technique. So I say a little past shoulder width apart. Like I don't want them here because they do need a little room to get the kettlebell through in between their legs. So a little past shoulder width apart is fine, and then they're going to be here, up, and then they're going to get momentum going. So and then the people who kind of know what they're doing, they're going to start out here a little bit, and then they're ready to go. Any other questions?
When would you program these? When would you program for?
That can be a conundrum because I view it as a very.
Because I guess it kind of is a little bit advanced.
It is a little bit advanced. I wouldn't say I'm going to put. I'm more than likely not going to put in like month 1 or 2. If I'm dealing with a complete beginner and they don't even have a good hip hinge pattern to begin with, this is probably not going to be a smart choice. Once they start demonstrating that, hey, now we're starting to get it down, we can do a pull through correctly, we're deadlifting, once or twice a week, and we're good with that. Then maybe in month 3 or 4 we can start introducing it. But then again, you get some people who just have very great kinesthetic awareness. They're athletes already. You have a kid who plays 3 sports. They pick up stuff pretty quickly. So you're going to have to use a little bit of coaching discretion. You get an eye for how people move and what you think they're capable of doing. Because I don't think it's that advanced of a movement where it's like, oh, we're not going to do it. You have to be able to deadlift twice your body weight before we do a kettlebell swing. And I'm not saying that's that's recommended by anyone, but there's some people like they won't do certain exercises until they can do X amount of weight with X exercise. I don't think it's that advanced. It is coaching intensive, and if you're taking the opportunity to actually coach your clients, then they foresee we should pick it up pretty quickly. But again, it's like with any questioning looking at it, it depends. But for a relative beginner, I'd probably hold off 2, 3, 4 months until they have it down, that hip hinge pattern down pat, and then we can throw it in, because it is more of an explosive ballistic, but it is a very, very, very great exercise to put into someone's routine. Whether we're looking to increase glute strength, posterior chain strength, just hip explosiveness, there is a lot of usefulness to putting it into a program. So, you could, I have put in a month one for some people, but they kind of been in the gym for a while, kind of know their way around, and you just kind of have to use a little coaching discretion. Does that answer it?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you also talk a little bit about where you would put it in a program, in the sense
we're
of
in the program, yeah.
based on your goals? Because some people use kettlebell swings for metabolic conditioning, some people use it more
Yep.
in place of an Olympic lift. So obviously
Yep.
you're going to want to put it in a different location.
Yep.
So
That's a good point. So let's backtrack a little bit and maybe say Turkish get up. It's not uncommon for me to actually put it into somebody's warm up, whether we're just doing a naked get up. They're getting glute activation, hip mobility, serratus activation, scapular stability. They're getting a lot of bang for the buck when they're doing a naked get up or a Turkish get up. So whether we're loaded get up is going to be a different question. So I think with the get up, I'm more inclined to put it more so down the chain a little bit. Like I'm going to do the more ballistic stuff, the more power based stuff first, and I'm going to do the big compound movements first before I start getting into the more. Because it's not like we're loading this too much. Because a lot of people, just doing body weight's really challenging enough. So with the Turkish get up, I'm more along the line, maybe the third pairing, fourth pairing, if we go that low. With a swing, we utilize metabols a lot. Like we don't, as you know, we don't do Olympic lifting a lot here. Not because we're against it. It's just we don't know how long we have guys. So spending so much time going over something so technique heavy when we only have a kid for 3 months, we could just throw a med ball, and that's they can pick that up pretty quickly. So in that context, it's not unheard of to put some kettlebell swings, as part of their med ball stuff. So they might do rotational med ball scoop toss with hip flexor mobilization, kettlebell swings with glute or T-spine something or whatever, some kind of activation. Right? So that's not uncommon. But again, I'm still probably more inclined to put it more so towards the edge, towards more of a metabolic type thing. Because most guys aren't going to be using the 70-pound kettlebell for swings, and I'm more inclined, especially with I wouldn't say fat loss, but just more so the general population clients using it as part of the finisher or part of a pairing circuit towards the end. Whether I'm pairing it with farmer carries all the way down, okay, now we're going to do 10 swings, right? So I'm more towards the end.
how would you use, give us an example of using kettlebell for metabolic conditioning? Go through the whole layout of it, sets, reps.
Yep. With the conditioning component, if I might have someone do a carry. You can use kettlebells for carries. You could do a suitcase carry, rack carry, overhead carry, crossbody carry. Have them carry down when they come back, do 10 swings. Walk down with the left, come back, do 10 swings. You can do one-arm swings. You can do one-arm swings paired with one-arm squats. Press. There's a ton of it. A lot of stuff that we would do with the med ball stuff, as far as number of exercises we're doing, 4, 5, 6 exercises in a row, we can do the kettlebell. So we all know the Jabora complex with barbells or dumbbells, where you do, the bent over row, RDL, front squat. We can do with the kettlebell, right? So we can start with a row, you do RDLs to a goblet squat, to press, to a swing. So this, there are a lot of options with the kettlebell. So that's how.
What was that one that you were using for a while? It was one goblet squat and then one swing and then 2, 3.
Oh yeah, that's nasty. So there's one where you do you'll do a goblet squat, do one squat, one swing, 2 squats, 2 swings, 3 squats, 3 swings, all the way up to 10, 12. So it's a ladder. Those suck. A good resource to get into that would be, Pablo writes about kettlebells almost exclusively. he talks about squats and deadlifts too, but Easy Strength. I know you've been reading it. I've been reading it. Fantastic book by Dan, Johnny, and Paulo, and they talk about some kettlebell ladders in there. But yeah, that one's cool with the ladders.
It's like 4 minutes of just pure
Yeah.
torture. I know our clients love that when they see that in there.
So any other questions with regards to those two?